The traffic light turned red at Harmony Junction, and that single pause in movement became the moment Mr. Danjuma Akinwale's entire world cracked open, because as his luxury SUV rolled to a slow stop he absent-mindedly reached for a bottle of water, loosened his tie, and stared through the tinted glass without really seeing anything until a soft knock landed on his window and his eyes finally focused on the young girl standing there with dust-covered feet and a baby strapped to her back, her wrapper torn, her blouse hanging weakly on her shoulders, sweat running down her face as she moved from car to car begging. But it wasn't her poverty that froze the breath in his chest, it wasn't the crying child or the desperation in her eyes, it was the crescent-shaped birthmark visible on her left shoulder through the tear in her blouse, the same exact mark he had carried all his life, the same mark his mother once kissed when he was young, the same mark his grandmother said ran through their bloodline. And in that instant his fingers went numb on the steering wheel, the water bottle slipped from his hand, soaked his expensive suit, and still he didn't notice because tears were already streaming down his face as realization slammed into him with brutal force. This wasn't just a beggar, this was his daughter, the daughter he had never held, the daughter he had searched for endlessly for 19 years, the daughter he was promised would grow up comfortable, loved, and safe, and as his driver turned in alarm asking if he should call the doctor. Danjuma could not answer because his chest felt too tight to breathe and his heart was beating like it wanted to escape. But to understand how destiny finally trapped him at that traffic light, one must go back to where everything truly began, 19 years earlier, when Danjuma Akinwale was just 23 years old, broke, hungry, and struggling to survive in Lagos, selling phone accessories at computer market where hundreds of boys fought daily over the same customers, some days earning barely enough to eat and other days returning home with empty pockets, living in a Face Me I Face You compound in Ajagunal where 6 men shared one cramped room. 2 mattresses lay on the floor, and a single filthy toilet served more than 15 families, where robbers visited often and hunger visited every day. Yet despite waking before dawn, bathing with cold water from a rusty well, trekking long distances to save transport fare, and wearing the same few shirts on rotation, Danjuma carried stubborn dreams inside him, borrowing business books from a roadside library, watching successful men closely, studying how they spoke, moved, and negotiated, whispering to himself that one day he would be somebody. While in a completely different world lived Nkiru Okori, 21 years old, only daughter of Chief Emmanuel Okori, a powerful hotel owner whose mansion in Ikoyi had 12 bedrooms, drivers, housemaids, private schools, and foreign trips, a life so comfortable yet so suffocating that every detail of her future, including who she would marry, had already been decided, leaving her deeply unhappy and desperate for something real. And fate chose an ordinary accident to connect 2 lives that were never meant to meet when Kiru's phone fell and cracked and her driver suggested computer market instead of buying a new one, exposing her for the first time to the noise, chaos, and shouting until she noticed a quiet young man fixing phones with careful hands. Danjuma looked up and felt his heart skip, not just because she was beautiful but because her eyes carried sadness. He repaired the phone, refused extra money, and when she smiled at him something shifted. Calls followed, then lunch. Then hours of conversation where she spoke of loneliness and he spoke of struggle and dreams, where she told him he was real and he replied that when you're poor pretending is expensive, and love bloomed in secret, deep and fast, despite her warnings that her parents would never accept him, despite his promise to work harder and become someone, until August turned them inseparable and October brought fear when Kiru realized she was pregnant, terrified yet hopeful that the baby would force acceptance. And when Danjuma refused to run and vowed to take responsibility, they decided to tell her parents, only for everything to shatter inside the cold silence of the Okori mansion when her father laughed at the idea of a charger seller marrying his daughter, humiliated Danjuma, called him nothing, claimed poverty was his destiny, and had him dragged out by security while Nkiru screamed, locked away and cut off from the man she loved, giving birth months later to a baby girl with the same crescent-shaped birthmark, naming her Amara before the child was ripped from her arms under the lie of adoption, while Danjuma searched endlessly, broke down completely, nearly ended his life in a dirty bathroom with poison in his hand before remembering his mother's words about never giving up, hardening his heart, and making a promise that they would all one day regret underestimating him, a promise that eventually turned him into a billionaire. Yet none of that success prepared him for the moment 19 years later when fate stopped traffic, lifted a torn blouse, revealed a birthmark, and placed his lost daughter directly in front of him under the Lagos sun. The light turned green, but Danjuma did not move because the world outside his window had stopped making sense as the girl tapped again gently, apologizing with her eyes while adjusting the crying baby on her back, and when he finally lowered the glass his voice came out broken as he asked her name, her age, and where she came from. Questions that confused her but did not scare her because hunger had already taught her there were worse things than curiosity, and she told him her name was Amara. That she was 19 years old, that she slept wherever night found her, and that the baby belonged to no one who would claim responsibility, words that sliced through him because they confirmed everything he feared and everything he already knew, and as traffic horns screamed behind him he told his driver to pull aside, stepped out into the heat and stood face to face with the child destiny had hidden from him for nearly 2 decades, noticing how her eyes mirrored his, how her chin matched his mother's, how even her silence carried the same quiet strength, and when he asked about her mother Amara hesitated before saying she died years ago from sadness and sickness, leaving her with relatives who treated her like a burden until the streets became kinder than family, and something inside Danjuma finally broke beyond repair as he knelt in the dust without caring who saw him and promised her that she would never beg again even though she did not believe him at first because too many men had made promises before driving away, yet this one cried openly, shaking, calling her my daughter again and again until the truth became impossible to deny, and within hours. DNA tests confirmed what blood already screamed, news that reached the Okri household like thunder because the same billionaire they once mocked was now the man exposing a lie buried for 19 years, forcing Chief Okri to relive the night he ordered a child stolen and a lover erased, forcing Kiru's mother to remember the baby she allowed to vanish to protect reputation, and forcing society to watch as Danjuma brought Amara into his mansion not as charity but as inheritance, surrounding her with doctors, therapists, teachers, and patients, understanding that money could fix comfort but not memory. And the adjustment was slow because trauma does not disappear in silk sheets, because Amara woke up crying at night expecting hunger, because she hid food under pillows, because she flinched at raised voices, yet Danjuma never rushed her healing, sitting with her for hours telling stories of her mother, stories of love that survived cruelty, stories of how Nkira laughed, dreamed, and believed in a future that was stolen. And when Amara finally asked why her mother was taken from her, Danjuma told the truth without bitterness, explaining pride, class, and fear, teaching her that forgiveness was power not weakness, and when the public demanded answers Chief Okri fell sick under the weight of guilt, calling Danjuma to apologize with a voice that shook, admitting that wealth had blinded him, that control destroyed his daughter, and that punishment had already arrived in the form of lifelong regret. An apology Danjuma accepted not for the old man's peace but for his daughter's freedom. And as months passed, Amara transformed not into arrogance but into confidence, returning to school, learning to speak without fear, holding her head high, choosing to keep her simple name despite new privilege, insisting on visiting the streets she once slept on to help girls like herself, proving that pain when guided properly becomes purpose. And one evening as father and daughter watched the city lights from a balcony, Danjuma admitted that success had never healed the hole in his heart until she stood at that traffic light, and Amara replied that destiny may be delayed but it never forgets, words that carried the wisdom of suffering beyond her years, and together they honored Nkiru not with anger but with legacy, building a foundation in her name for abandoned girls, ensuring no child vanished into silence again, and Lagos whispered their story as a reminder that no lie stays buried forever, that no child is truly lost, and that love, no matter how deeply suppressed, always finds a way back home.